Thanks for staying with us and turning our attention to other stories. Heavily armed troops have evacuated outgoing Sri Lanka Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa from his official residence after thousands of protesters breached the main gate amid the worst violence in weeks of protest over an unprecedented economic crisis. Protesters who forced their way into the Prime Minister's official Temple Trees residence in Colombo then attempted to storm the main two-story building on Tuesday, where Mr. Rajapaksa was holed up with his immediate family. The embattled 76-year-old leader was forced to resign on Monday after weeks of protests over the worst economic crisis the island nation is facing since its independence in 1948. The resignation marked a sudden fall from grace for the patriarch of the all-powerful Rajapaksa clan that has dominated Sri Lanka politics for nearly 20 years. Let's stay with the crisis in Sri Lanka as global affairs analyst Calvin Dark joins me from Washington, D.C. via Skype. Good to have you join us.
Good to be here.
So before we get into the crisis itself and just the protests we've seen in a couple of weeks and even months, let me ask you about the Rajapaksa family, because they've always been a really close family. With now outgoing Prime Minister Mahinda being the face of that dynasty. He's regarded as a war hero after defeating the Tamil rebels. But it seemed that he was sacrificed by his brother, President Gotabaya. What's your assessment of the politics playing out in Sri Lanka?
Well, I think the family, the Rajapaksa family, is a key element in everything that's happening. I'm going to just go ahead and tell you, like, I had to kind of do like a little family tree because so many important government positions currently and over the last couple of decades, the family has occupied those. And it's been kind of like, you know, revolving seats and chairs. So the family is integral to what's happening there. Now, the other part is, as you were saying, with the resignation of the older brother, former president, and you know, now former prime minister, you know, will that solve things? I don't know, because if the problem is the image of the family and the way the family has run, or in the opinion of some, mismanaged the economy in Sri Lanka, will one of the many family members in power resigning really address the problems and the wishes of the protesters?
And the wishes of the protester, or the major wish of the protester, is that both brothers resign from office. But President Gotabaya is not showing any sign of leaving her office. He has said he's not going to quit. So the resignation of Prime Minister Mahinda does seem like a partial victory. And how does this address the demands of the protesters?
Well, I think what's going to be clear is this. You have an economic situation that, in part, as a lot of analysts are saying, is due to the mismanagement of the family. But then you also have things that were outside of the control. The COVID pandemic, for example, that, you know, distressed every economy in the world, including Sri Lanka's, and in particular on the tourism industry, of course, that dampened that. And, you know, let's think that even if it wasn't an issue of the family, any leader of Sri Lanka, any leader of any country, is got a really hard road to travel to try to come back economically from the pandemic. So I don't really see how the prime minister resigning is going to really answer what the protesters are calling for, because it doesn't look like the president has any new solutions or is going to do anything radically different than, you know, change out members of his family for other posts. So I think the key is in the solution. If he doesn't have a particular solution to get them out of this economic crisis, then I don't think his brother resigning did anything but delay the inevitable.
And even if President Gotabaya were to resign, I mean, this economic crisis has been there for a really long time. Sri Lanka is bogged down by a lot of debt to the IMF, to China, to India. They are also now looking for more loans from the IMF. They have approached the IMF for more loans, China and India as well. How do you think that this political instability will play out for them in terms of being able to secure these loans?
Well, first of all, regardless of the family, political instability is one of those things that's going to make international financial support really, really difficult. Here's the other dynamic. When you've got the Rajapaksa family in charge, mismanagement or not, they have become the face of the economic turmoil in Sri Lanka. So if you take, for example, the IMF or other potential lenders, they are not going to want to provide the financing that Sri Lanka is asking for if it's still going to be controlled by the people that are at least believed to have mismanaged the funds in the past. So true or not, that's going to be a very big hindrance. And I don't see how the current president, even with his brother's resignation, can assuage those fears of instability and mismanagement. Why would you give money to someone who people are protesting and burning down houses because they say they mismanaged the money they had before?
And I guess the big question is what it would take Sri Lanka to pick up the pieces and rebuild its economy. We'll continue to monitor the situation in that country. Thank you for talking to us, as always. Global Affairs Analyst Calvin Dak.
Thank you.